Welcome back. Now, the IEC has declared the national and provincial elections free and fair, despite glitches saying irregularities were immaterial. Now, despite many disputes over election process discrepancies and calls to delay the announcement, the IEC had released the final tally on Sunday evening. Joining us now, I'd like to welcome Akhtari Henning, who serves as the IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Corporate Service. Akhtari, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran so much for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam, and thank you for having me here as well.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. You were working really, really hard. If anyone doesn't believe me, they should actually look at those CCTV cameras from the ROC. But Akhtari, let's talk about the elections, of course. And there was so much to take stock with regards to this. The first thing I want to talk about the 3 ballot boxes. Of course, this is something that the IEC had foretold quite some time ago, so that it could prepare the voter for it. Talk to us about the challenges of that, because I mean that is definitely something that really was, from a counting perspective, a bit of a tough task for the for IEC officials doing the count.
Look, we had always trained and made provision for 3 ballot boxes so that we can identify one as a national, one as a provincial, and one as a regional ballot box. What I found too in some of the voting stations that I had the little bit of time to go and visit was that there was 1 ballot box and 3 ballot papers was put into it. So logically, it would have caused and had indeed caused that the counting process would then only be able to take off once the ballots had been sorted. It's like putting things in 3 boxes and you know that this is marked all apples, that's pears, and that's oranges. But when you mix all the fruits in one box, you know it's going to take longer to sort out to be able to count how many of each type of fruit that you have. So it did play a role in getting to the actual counting itself, because the procedure is very clear that when we open these boxes, we have to sort them. Now, normally we open them up and we sort them per vote as to which party this ballot belongs to. Unfortunately, in this one, we then had to first sort what's a national, what's a regional, and what's a provincial ballot, and then get to the sorting of the actual votes, and then starting to count and making sure that the reconciliation that we have in place to make sure all the ballot papers are accounted for is then part of the process, which is part of the process, then could be concluded. So it did play a role and a factor in it. Training was done on it extensively over and over again. We also had refresher training, and very specifically on what we call Module 5. There was extensive training with regards to counting. However, it didn't take as long as it would have if we did not bring in the extra resources that we did, which we preempted that counting would take long. So we made provision. It did assist us in many ways, because I'm not sure if we would still have made the mark to be able to deliver on the dates and the timeframes that we had agreed upon.
Akhtari, there were a number of contestations and discrepancies brought by the political parties. Obviously, we were there, we heard their side of it. Um, how was the IEC able to deal with it? Because, there were fears. We heard MK Party leader Jacob Zuma saying that they will not allow the election results to take place on Sunday. It happened. The final tally was there. So talk to us about the IEC's preparedness for these eventualities.
Okay. So in terms of contestations, you can only do it through a Section 55 objection. And every single election we prepare for objections. So you would have seen, if you were at the Rock, we had a little room close to the dining area, which we marked as the shark tank, but it's not actually where the sharks sit. It's just that because it's a little bowl that they call themselves that. But we had a team of legal capacity that we had brought on board and meticulously combing through each objection. Now, you would have heard that there was a mix-up or a mixture of complaints and objections. Now, complaints are your general ones where somebody would say, you know what, the presiding officer was rude to me, or they did this, or they did that. They made me stand too long, but I wanted to sit down. There wasn't chair. So those are complaints, and complaints are dealt with separately. The actual contestations is in the form of and a prescribed format of what we put out and a system in place to deal with Section 55 objections, of which we had a team of legal experts on board to help us work through these objections and the investigations to each objection that is then monitored, and we get the information from our presiding officer diaries. Very, very important. It's a key tool in every voting station, and making sure that every event, even when I went to the voting stations, even as the DCO corporate services, I had to sign into those diaries that I was there. And the presiding officer also captured any remarks I made, any if I had discussions with anybody. So it's quite meticulous about the records that we keep in there. So those are vital tools in helping us make sure that we can deal with the objections and deal with it in a very meticulous manner, and so that it can stand up in any court of law. We also made sure that we have obviously all our ducks in a row when it came to issues of occupational health and safety. And we allowed the MK party, you were there on Saturday night when the media was all blocking and causing an occupational health and safety issue around the rock there. And we had to then diffuse them or try to diffuse them. It was only later on that our colleagues from the MK party just said, look, we need to get this thing under control. And we moved them to the auditorium. And we actually had to call the media to order right there. You were standing with us when you saw that. It's a matter of manpower. It's a matter of making sure that we've got systems and processes and dealing with things cordially with each other. I think it's number one for us. But as you may have noted, I don't take occupational health and safety easily. It's something that's a priority for us, for myself as well as the Electoral Commission. And obviously, we take the same diligence and due care when we deal with these contestations in terms of Section 55 objections.
Akhtari, the MK party, amongst other parties, of course, want to lodge a complaint at the electoral court. They still believe that there was quote unquote rigging within the election. So, from a legal perspective, how is the IEC preparing for these potential eventualities should they arrive?
In terms of what we normally do, we normally get contestations after any election process, even by elections as well. We do have these. So we do have teams of professionals that are on board from a legal point of view. But we've made sure that all our information and all our ducks always is in a row, making sure that the evidence, because we work on an evidence basis. So he who alleges needs to prove, and we'll be there to make sure that we can defend that point that we stand with. It's extremely important for people to know that we make sure that we've got our ducks in a row, we've got our I's dotted and our T's crossed, and we work on an evidence basis. So, whether it's the MK party or any other party, we welcome such things and we'll be there to defend the cause and we'll stay on the cause. That we made sure that this election is a free and fair election.
Akhtari, 58.64% voter turnout. Uh, Many are disappointed that it wasn't a larger perspective, and I think it takes a country as a collective to try and convince the electorate that they need to exercise their democratic right. From an IEC perspective, do you believe there was enough voter education for this year's polls?
Let me tell you this. If you look at our APP, which will be published very soon, in fact, if you look at the current APP that's on the website, that's your annual performance plan that we do. And we tell the nation what we're going to be doing with the funds and how we get measured in terms of performance. We had put in a target for voter education in the last financial year, ending 31 March 2024. We actually had to make a substantive submission to the AG, who's currently still auditing, as to why we had almost 300% exceeded the target. If there's one thing I can tell you, we made sure that we push all resources, not financial resources, push people to the ground to make sure that voters are educated not just about their right in terms of democracy, but also what does voting mean and what the three ballot papers are going to mean and how they need to go about to mark their ballot papers. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the flurry of not only the social media posts that we put out in terms of voter education, but in the TV space as well, the television space as well, the number of adverts on commercial radios, and the mark that we made in communities, going out there, making sure that we look at smaller pockets, focusing on the rural areas, right up to the urban areas, to make sure that people understand their democratic right, making sure that they understand the voting process, and more importantly, what the three ballot papers mean and how they should actually go and make their mark. You will see the percentage of spoiled ballots is actually quite small compared to what we had expected, because we were introducing this third ballot at a national level. It's the first time ever that we've had this. So it has had its impact. We try and do as much as we can, but as much as we are going out and doing voter education, there's also a big role played by the NPOs and the NGOs, as we used to call them before, and the political parties themselves, to make sure that people turn out and pitch up to come and vote. It's not as good as I expected. I was really expecting a huge voter turnout. When you look at the number of people who have actually come in and interacted with the Electoral Commission during the registration process. I mean, for me, it was phenomenal that people were communicating with us in such high numbers, not just to check their voting district, but also to say to us, I have moved from voting district A to voting district B. What changed? Because the weather was great. Normally, we know the weather plays a huge role in the voter turnout. What changed between then and now? I can't say, but it's always up to the individual to enact upon their democratic right to come and make a mark on that ballot papers.
Akhtari, I've got one more minute. I just wanted to get your answer on this. How much did this election test the strength of our democracy from an IEC perspective?
The people have spoken. I think from an IEC perspective, for all of us, we know that it's not something we were expecting, in terms of numbers and that. But we knew that this election was going to make a difference and people will come out in masses. Again, I reference the voter registration. It was an indication that people want to have a voice, and this is their voice without taking to the streets and protesting about whatever their gripes may have been. So it's a test. It's a new age and a new era for us as South Africans. And as we move out, we'll see what the next 2 weeks hold in terms of coalitions. It's not up to us. We have done our job. And our final stretch is coming on the 6th of June. We'll gazette the seat allocations tomorrow. And the 6th of June, we hand over those lists to the Chief Justice, who will then take the process from there.
Akhtari, shukran so much for joining us. You do get some rest because you and the rest of many of the IEC staff definitely do deserve that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
That's Akhtari Henning. She serves as the IEC's Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Corporate Services. Well, that's all we have for you here. Tomorrow will be Talking Point after the news. So do stay tuned to Hilaal TV for more of these content. From myself, Ras Patel, the rest of the team in Johannesburg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.